It says much about the current state of UK politics that today's spending review has taken on such importance. What should be a relatively straightforward event, in which Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, sets out the government's spending plans for the next 3 financial years, has even been billed by some commentators as the defining moment of this parliament. This is because, little under a year after being handed a landslide majority by the UK electorate, Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government is deeply unpopular and thrashing around for ways to appease a surly and resentful public. It is important, at the outset, to make clear what won't happen today. This is not a fiscal event. Reeves is committed to just one of these a year, and the next will be her autumn budget. So there will be no forecasts from the Office for Budget Responsibility, and no details on how the government plans to raise money during the next financial year. There will also be no changes to tax policy announced, nor, unless something remarkable happens, will there be any changes to the overall sums the government expects to spend. That is because those figures are already in the public domain. Reeves set out last October the spending envelope for the next 3 financial years, with day-to-day spending, such as salaries for public sector workers, set to rise by an average of 1.2% in real terms over the next 3 years, and capital spending, such as transport infrastructure, set to rise by an average of 1.3% in real terms over the next 4 years. That spending envelope, the tightest for many years, has been dictated by Reeves' much-vaunted fiscal rules that day-to-day spending must be covered by tax revenues, not borrowing, and that debt as a proportion of GDP should be falling by the end of this parliament. Most economists think she is in severe danger of breaking those rules, though having set herself wiggle room of just £9.9 billion, $13.4 billion, in her last budget. Since when the economic outlook has deteriorated and yields on gilts, UK government bonds have risen, implying higher than expected government borrowing costs in the coming years. All of which adds to the significance of today's spending review, which is, as the Independent Institute for Fiscal Studies (IFS) points out, the first multi-year spending review since 2021 and the first to happen outside of a pandemic since 2015. And, despite it not being a fiscal event, the bond markets will be watching for hints on what to expect regarding taxation and borrowing in the autumn. We received one such hint when, on Monday, the Treasury announced a humiliating U-turn on one of the government's first big decisions. Shortly after being elected in July last year, Reeves announced that the winter fuel allowance, a bung to pensioners of either £200 or £300 a year, introduced in 1997 by one of her Labour predecessors, Gordon Brown, would henceforth be means-tested, effectively stripping it from 10 million pensioners. However, after a political backlash, the Treasury said on Monday the benefit would be restored to all but the wealthiest 2 million pensioners, in a move that will cost the government £1.5 billion annually. No indication was given on where that money will come from. There have also been plenty of other leaks concerning the spending review. The Times reported on Saturday that the National Health Service, NHS, will receive a 2.8% increase in real terms to its day-to-day budget over the 3-year period, roughly equivalent to an extra £30 billion in cash terms by 2028. The question here, with leaders of the doctors' union already agitating for industrial action, is how much of that will actually go toward improving patient services and how much will be handed to doctors in pay awards to stave off strikes. The other big winner looks to be defense, which, as the IFS has noted, seems to have been implicitly allocated all of the increase in capital spending over the spending review period. The government has already set out plans to raise defense spending from the present 2.3% of GDP to 2.5% of GDP by 2027, and to 3% by the early 2030s, and it is under pressure to go further. The Trump administration has made clear it thinks NATO members should be spending 5% of GDP on defense, and, in a speech on Monday, Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, said the same. Reeves would need to find an extra £24 billion to take defense spending to just 3% of GDP. These big spending commitments, particularly for the NHS, which already consumes £2 in every £5 of day-to-day government spending, will mean real-term cuts in other departments. Many of these have already been stretched by years of austerity following the global financial crisis, from which the UK emerged with a deficit-to-GDP ratio of 10%.